Hi, welcome to Chamber Chats. I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. We talk about business and community in these programs, and I would like, of course, at first to acknowledge that I live and work in the ancestral territories of the Lekwungen-speaking Coast Salish First Nations, rather being the Esquimalt and the Songhees in particular. Program is presented by Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, and by C-SPAN Victoria Shipyards. We have these conversations, and we've been describing our circumstance right now as saying that we are all together taxiing down the recovery runway, getting ready for that liftoff that's going to happen at the end. And those that are sort of steering the way, if you will, and pivoting in their business are the pivot pilots. Well, we're doing this broadcast from the podcasting studio at CHEK Television, who have been pivoting for quite some time. In fact, this place had a major pivot about 10 years ago, which has been very inspiring to the business community, and I wanted to talk more about that in this week's edition. Rob Germain joins me. He's the general manager of this operation here at the CHEK Media Group. Rob, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. So like 10 years ago, something fairly cataclysmic happened to this operation, and you had to pivot into another direction. So give me the Reader's Digest version of that.
It was almost 12 years ago, and the company that owned CHEK put the station up for sale. We actually were a little bit relieved because the station had been cut back so much. But then we all got layoff notices. The station was going to close. Our backs were up against the wall, and like most pivots, it was a combination of necessity and opportunity and a little bit of serendipity. We were, trying to find some investors, maybe as a group, that would want to buy the station locally. We felt that there was a business model there that we had created. One of the investors we approached said, if you guys would be willing to, put some money in yourselves as employees. He knew the model of Harmac, the pulp mill in Nanaimo that had become employee owned, and we had covered that story extensively, so we knew the story. The light went on. I followed up with Levi Sampson, the president of Harmac, to find out how they structured that deal and how we might do something similar. Levi not only offered to advise us, but also came in as an investor into CHEK, and he's on the chair of our board. So that was our biggest pivot for sure, and it's been many pivots since then.
Ongoing pivots, actually. And of course, I think as we all know, I was also in broadcasting at your competition while all this was happening. So we watched this happen. And progressively through the growth of this organization, the fact that you're independent now, you are not beholden to any other larger organization, you can make your own decisions now.
It makes a big difference in terms of, we're not big, but we're small. I mean, there are advantages to being small as well. And one of them is that you're nimble and that you can change on a dime if you have to. You can, decisions are made locally. And so, lots of things that we're able to do creatively, on a short timeline that you just would have never gotten approved under the old, corporate model.
Yeah. We're going to go through some of those stages, and I think everybody that's going to be watching and listening to this can relate to changes they've had to make in their own business. But let's zoom back now to literally Zoom, because we're on Zoom, 14 months ago when this whole pandemic came along. Again, everyone was making the pivot to do what they had to do. Did you feel that you were a little more prepared maybe than a lot of people because you had done what you'd done to date?
I think certainly having survived, the previous economic crisis, if you will, gave us, at least those that are still here from those times, probably gave us a little bit of more confidence. We've done this before. We have to band together. It's not going to be easy. Also, I think just the fact that we are the creators of our own destiny as employee owners, right? So we're not waiting for somebody to decide what to do next. We're the ones making the decisions, and as a group, we're making those decisions. And we know, I put out a memo saying, we're actually in pretty good shape financially going into this. We've been paying down our debts. We've been, doing all the right things we've been, making investments in equipment so we can, we're hoping we can ride this out. We didn't want to be laying anybody off. We knew we had a role to play here, providing the news, trusted news during a crisis. This is where we are going to shine. And so we decided we weren't going to lay anybody off. We were going to continue doing everything we could. One area that we had, suddenly no sports to cover. was a big chunk of our newscast,
Yeah.
7 days a week covering sports. And so a corporation probably would have said, okay, we'll just lay those guys off. Instead, we were like, well, how do we redeploy these people? And we've got time to fill from the sportscast. There's a need. We've got some talent here. Let's create a positive news segment. That's going to be needed during this crisis. There's going to be a lot of bad news. Maybe we can talk about the good things happening in the community around this COVID crisis. And you know what? We've got one camera that we can be live with each night, because we had to scale that back for a number of reasons. But we couldn't have people in the studio. So we sent our sports director out to the field along with our weather guy to do the positive news segment. The Upside was born. It's a segment on our news that's just been phenomenally popular over the last 14 months.
Yeah, and you went to the upside with that. You bring in technology, which we'll touch on again in a moment too. But standard television is usually done by putting a bunch of people in a studio and they talk, and they tell things and they report things. But you suddenly didn't have a building full of people. Everybody was working remotely. So that pivot, if you will, was imposed on you by the circumstance, but you embraced that. So talk about how technology has become an advantage for you.
Yes, and again, we were lucky in that we had recently invested in VPN servers and live technology. We used to have microwave trucks and satellite trucks to be able to go live. Now you can use a porta pack and go live on location using bundled cell phone technologies. And so we were able to utilize that equipment, get people out of the building. 3 out of 4 of our staff are working from home, being dispatched from home. They're still gathering the news, they're still putting on all the shows and producing commercials and everything, all from home. But technology allows it, obviously, to network with others in the building and within the company. And we didn't miss a hitch, really.
So what I want to talk about next is using that technology and leveraging that, as well as the creation of a culture in an organization like this. We are talking today with Rob Germain, who's the general manager of the CHEK Media Group. Not just CHEK TV anymore, it's the CHEK Media Group. So when you've defined this under your own ownership, you're no longer, as we said before, beholden to a network or an out-of-town national owner. How did that change the culture in this operation? Just people's relationships with each other and with your clients and your viewers?
Well, obviously, we're all in this together. We used to, even with management union kind of relationship, there was, there could be conflict, there could be adversarial positions. Now it's like, hey, how can we, come up with a solution? It's changed the dynamic quite a bit. Really, the other difference, and probably one of the biggest differences, is that we are about sustainability in the long run for this company. So we're not looking for a short-term profit. We're not trying to cut costs in order to boost the the next quarter profit margin. Our interests are long-term, and on behalf of all of this employees, but also on behalf of all of the community, because we're really a purpose-driven organization. We probably could have got jobs elsewhere. The reason we work so hard to keep this company going is we felt it was rewarding what we were doing. We knew we were having an impact in the community. We're bringing people together every night to watch our newscasts and our programming, and we're making a difference.
Not without its struggles. People that are watching and listening to this know that as change happens in any operation, whether it's large, medium, or small size company, there are struggles, and you had a few. There were some bumps on the road.
Well, like any startup, I mean, the
Yeah.
company's been around for 65 years now, but it was 53 when we became independent. But really, we were basically had become a startup business, and like any startup, you're going to go through challenges and until you find the right model and the right thing, make things right. There was a time as well that we initially we got some funding through the government that was then removed on very short notice. We had to adapt by everybody in the company taking a pay cut. And that was everybody from management right on down to the entry level person took across the board pay cut. That's something that probably wouldn't happen at most companies. But it was, rather than lay people off, we decided as a group that's what we were going to do. That's how we were going to overcome that.
But that, of course, is what you do as an owner. If you own a business and it's not doing as you expect, your revenue is decreased, you have to take a pay cut. So there's There's not only a lesson in that, but there's got to be some motivation, I would think, too. That's part of creating this culture in which you all operate here.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're prepared to do anything we can to make it a success, because we know that that's in our interest, right, long term. And so you dig a little deeper. When you leave the room, you turn off the lights. Uh,
Yeah.
you do things that maybe, if you were in a large corporation, employees may not have the same ownership feeling about it, and just, yeah, changes your attitude a bit.
Yeah, well, it builds in that resilience too that we kind of referred to before. Um, the physical building itself has had some transformation. As times change, this where I'm sitting right now, the studio is an addition, for example. As the technology advances, you make changes in your building, which again, a lot of business owners are having to do right now, even if it's to build a home office because they didn't have one before. Tell me about the
Mhm.
changes you've done in the building here.
Well, first of all, just buying the building was a big
Right?
thing. When we first became owners, employee owners, we were renters in the building, and we consolidated on the ground floor. Since then, we bought the building because it became available. We were worried that somebody else would buy it and maybe, jack up the rent or turf us out.
Take it
That
down.
would
Yeah.
that would have crippled the company. So we bought the building. It was a risk at the time. We were still, a couple of years into this, and but it's been a good investment. And we've been creating a media entertainment technology center. We've got CBC on our second floor. We've got a tech company also on the second floor. Our third company is being rented by successive film production companies. So we rent out our studios. We have, well, three studios now, including the podcast studio that you're in. We have, right as we speak, an independent production company is renting out our commercial production studio and using that for the next 4 days. Our new studio is pretty much dedicated to news, but the podcast studio is new, something we've started before COVID. It took a little longer because of COVID to get it under construction, but that's created a whole new model for us as broadcasters and multimedia casters, I guess you call us.
Yeah, which is again, this is a facility people can rent and
Mhm.
come in and do their own work on this too.
Correct.
Um, so the diversity within what the media group has become, any company wants to expand and get larger, which you've done. So instead of just being CHEK Television, you're the CHEK Media Group. So pretend I'm a stranger and I say, what do you do? Oh, I'm with the CHEK Media Group. Oh, what's that? What's the answer to that?
Well, I mean, we called it Czech Media Group right from the beginning when we took it over, although it was really, just Czech television and a website. But certainly digital is becoming, much, much more important over time. And, even 12 years ago when we took it over, it was significant. Um, but we didn't know anything about Netflix back then. We
Mm.
hadn't anticipated that. So, one of the things we're working on now and about to launch is CHEK Plus, which is our version of Netflix, if you will. Uh, and no, you're not going to have to pay another subscription fee for it. It'll be free. It'll be ad supported, but it'll allow people who maybe don't have cable, or cord cutters or cord nivers, as they call them,
Yeah.
to be able to watch our programming, whether it's live or on demand.
But you see, that's something that you can decide to do because you don't report to a higher authority. So that must again be really empowering for your staff to see this kind of creativity happen all the time and motivating.
I hope so. It is. It's also more difficult when you're not part of a network. I mean, you don't
Yeah.
have as many levers to pull when to make something like that happen. So it's a bigger gamble for us. It's a bigger investment for us. But we realize that with consumer habits changing, with technology changing, with digital disruption, we've got to stay ahead of the curve if we're, again, going to be sustainable in the long term. And definitely all the employees are behind that.
Something else that's happened in the last 12 years is that you have doubled the number of staff you have, and I want to talk about that next. When you're moving, Rob Germain, through this new model that you've built and creating this culture in the new company, you basically doubled the number of employees that are working for the company. Who are those employees? Who did you add on, and what do they do?
Well, some of them we had to add on immediately. So there were 38 former employees under the old company that came with it. That formed the new company. But then we had to hire some people. Some people we hired back who had been previously laid off by the former company. Some were new hires. In order to just fill out, we weren't really a standalone station. We were part of a network. So we were using control rooms in Vancouver and our master control, which plays it back all the programming commercials that was based in Calgary. We had to consolidate that back and be a standalone station again. So that we had to hire master control operators. We had to hire people in our control room to operate our newscast while the news is live on the air. We tried to, be careful in terms of how quickly we grew, because we needed, obviously, to make this a sustainable model. The other thing is CanWest had laid off almost our entire commercial production department. When we normally would make a commercial for our advertising clients, they don't already have one. And CanWest decided that wasn't necessary. Well, it's really hard for us to service our local clients' property without that commercial production arm. So we hired back those people, one by one, and that department has continued to grow. They also produce a lot of programs now that air on our station. Everybody's a multitasker here. We've been growing our news operations, growing the news you see at 5 and 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock and weekends, adding, but also adding to our digital news component, so that we, are going, morning till night, 7 days a week, updating our website with new information, streaming video and audio. We've recently hired Rob Shaw as a political correspondent, adding to our, beefing up our news operations. So it's in just about every area. We've also hired a new media specialist, we're calling him, who operates our podcast center there, and will be operating our, or at least overseeing our over-the-top channel, our CHEK Plus channel. So some of it's growing, some of it's just beefing up what we're currently doing, hopefully making the product better. We're not just growing for growth's sake. We're not trying to grow to boost the bottom line. We're trying to, again, make this a sustainable model, and something that where we see there's an opportunity, we're certainly happy to look at that.
If this was a store, in any average store, you have inventory. The inventory is what's on the shelves. That's what we buy and take home. Yeah. Your inventory is the airtime that you sell, the commercials that are adjacent to the programming. In the previous iteration, you didn't have control over your own inventory a lot of the time. That was taken over by the network. You have complete control over everything you air now. So that means that you take whatever, you eat what you kill, is the old expression, but you have complete control over that. So that's something that would be the envy of a lot of businesses.
Yes, again, it's also a burden. Sure. With a network comes network programming, and you can just worry about the other things. We have to, negotiate to get Wheel of Fortune and Jeopardy. We have to negotiate for all the programming that you see on CHEK. Some of it, is great, and some of it is, we'd like to improve in certain areas. And it is a tough challenge. We're a very small piece of the pie, of the broadcasting pie. And so we do work with some other broadcasters, some other independent broadcasters, to purchase programming. That helps. And we've created something called IndieNet to attract national advertising. They can reach 94% of Canadians by advertising on this group of stations, independent stations across Canada. So it's an alternative for advertisers as well.
Speaking of Jeopardy, if they're looking for a gray-haired Canadian host, I'm available if you happen to be talking to them.
All right, I'll put your name in.
To replace Alex for that. But we talk about the content that you have that you would get from a network. The programming you've created yourself, though, that you do in-house. You've got that brand new sports program. There's programs like this one. There's others. So tell me about that stable of things that you've been able to create in order to generate revenue and content.
Well, in the past year, what's been really interesting is, again, out of necessity and opportunity and a little bit of serendipity, we've been creating a lot of programming, just one-off kind of programming, working with community groups. The Chamber, for example, yes. Hearing the Chamber Awards, virtual Chamber Awards that would have been held in person, and generating, programming and getting tune in from local audiences on that. We've been working with everyone from Western Speedway, producing, covering the Canada 200 stock car race. That's their flagship race, which was the only race they raced last year, and they couldn't have anybody in the stands. So we covered it on television, and they got tens of thousands of viewers watching it on television. We've done that with the Victoria Symphony. We've done that with numerous dozens of community groups, Terry Fox Foundation, Cops for Cancer. And that's one model. The other is just creating our own programming. We recently picked up 3 guys that were laid off by TSN 1040 in Vancouver, now doing a sports talk show on CHEK. It was, we knew that they had a loyal loyal audience, listening audience for them because they were on radio. And we saw it as an opportunity to maybe bring that to multicast that. So we're bringing it to television, but it's also streaming live on audio devices. You can have a live video and audio stream. So if you used to listen to them on the radio, you can now listen to them on TuneIn Radio or on Google Home or Alexa or on the CHEK News app.
Mm-hmm.
Streaming audio in your car. So it's also available as a podcast, the program. So it's really a multicast program.
So embracing that sort of technology to make that happen, and providing exposure to things like our Chamber of Commerce, our business awards, the stock car, the symphony, all of those things brought all of those organizations a much larger audience than they would ever have had. So I don't see a lot of this stuff going away, quite honestly. And I suppose when the time comes, you'll get back to showing the parades on the air too.
Yeah, I think some of it's going to stick. It's definitely been, we've almost created a new model for us, because what we were able to do is find sponsors that wanted to support the symphony or wanted to support the Western Speedway. Businesses that were bought advertising, bought sponsorships. In some cases, just individual business owners coming on saying, I support all the guys racing today at Western Speedway, and they small dollars, but a number of them add up. And so all the commercial breaks during the Speedway were all local businesses that normally support the Speedway in one way or another, that were able to do it through this model.
It's an amazing story. It really is. Whether it's in media or not, this kind of a success story is well earned and well done. And thanks very much for sharing the story with us. Rob Germain is the general manager of the CHEK Media Group. And that's our Chamber Chat for this week. I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you for another chat soon.
For more episodes of Chamber Chats, go to cheknews.ca/podcasts.